And then the other thing we've been asked to do is small grants. So we do an awful lot of small grants for security and protection, you know, reinforcing offices, CCTV cameras, walls around offices, steel doors, that sort of thing. Bulletproof vests, medical treatment after torture, anything like that that will help a human rights defender to continue the work, and increasingly stress management, because human rights defenders, women human rights defenders, because it's all so tied up with their families, as we've heard from so many women here today, we have to find ways to expand our work to include family members and how we can support in a more holistic way a woman human rights defender. And the other thing is emergency relocation. So far this year we've done 70 people this year from around the world, which is 3 times as many as asked us last year. So that's basically the kind of thing that we do. But one thing I'm very keen on is the EU guidelines on human rights defenders, and I'm hoping that this is something that Professor Mistel might follow up with the Polish government, because the EU guidelines on human rights defenders spell out the steps that EU missions can take, and the EU as a whole, the EU Parliament, the Commission, the EU member states, can take as a whole to help protect human rights defenders. And they are very simple and basic steps that that member states can take where a woman human rights defender is under threat. A specific role for the missions on the ground. Very few diplomats know about them. Very few human rights defenders know about them. So we try and do training that they both, you know, together, so they get to know about the guidelines and what they can expect of each other. But it is something that the Polish government, it would be great if they could mainstream the implementation of EU guidelines into their foreign policy and take away protecting human rights defenders. After many years working in this area, I do think that governments really don't mainstream protection of human rights defenders. It's a matter of personal commitment rather than a policy in foreign policy. And I'll finish now with a quote which I absolutely love from Anna Politkovskaya, because a great friend of mine was killed a few months, 15th of July, Natasha. And for all of the people here who are struggling against all the odds, and all of the people around the world, this to me sums up why, as Mariam said earlier on today, that you continue to do the work. And it goes, so each time I go there, people tell me things. And Anna was working in Chechnya, and she was documenting abuses there. And she wrote, just a couple of months before she was murdered, so each time I go there, people tell me things. They do so in the hope that it will lead to change, to peace. I know I'm not to blame for what is happening, but the more I think of it, the more I realize that I have to take this to the bitter end, so that no one will say that when things became difficult, I ran away.
Well, kind of hard to say anything after those very moving words. Thank you very much for them. We are running out of time, right, Mr. Mistel? He's the boss here. We're not. We have 8 minutes. We have 7 minutes. Okay, you're keeping track of time. Thank you for that. Well, as we just heard, there isn't one precise answer to the question as how we can help. There are many issues that needs to be addressed, and there are many problems that needs to be taken care of. It's a matter of financial assistance, of technological assistance, of assisting the prisoners and the activists in Iran. It's a matter of non-governmental organizations and governments. I can't really think of anything, you know, wise enough to say to maybe bring this session to an end. I know two more of our guests still want to have their word. If I could just ask you to be disciplined in a matter of time, because as we just said, we have 7 minutes now. So please, first Mariam Mamar-Sadeghi and then Fariba Davoudi Mahajer, okay, for the last words.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I have had a lot of things to say, and I'll cut it down very, very much. about what can be done, I wanted to talk a little bit about things that aren't helpful from governments. I want to start by saying that I'm an American. I went to the United States from Iran during the revolution with my parents, and I was 7 years old then, and so I spent practically all my life in the United States. I'm very proud to be an American, and as an American, I voted for Barack Obama, and yet at the same time, I very proudly at times, sometimes more often than not, lately a lot, feel that I'm Iranian. And this has been a very difficult time to be both Iranian and American, because I think that we are on the verge of a betrayal by the Obama administration when it comes to the defense of the most basic civil and political liberties that Iranians are struggling for. I don't know if it's the bad luck of coming on the heels of 8 years of the Bush administration, or if it's because of the nuclear program, or what, but the convergence of factors has, the war in Iraq, have left the Iranian people with, I think, a lot of betrayal as far as the international response has been. The Europeans, the French, have come out so much stronger than the United States when it comes to the obvious cheating that resulted in the protests. Obama refused to recognize that it was an illegitimate election, the results of which the Iranian people took very seriously. He was unwilling to acknowledge that this is a major problem, and that U.S. foreign policy has been historically about speaking out against fraudulent elections, and that this has been a hallmark of the Democratic Party, from Woodrow Wilson to Jimmy Carter. And so I think it needs to be said that democracy promotion is important, and the budgets need to be put out for it, but the rhetoric of foreign policy, the rhetoric of political leaders in the free world is extremely important. A couple of days after the elections, almost after he was forced to talk about it and to recognize what's happening on the ground in Iran, he said, well, the United States has two interests with regard to Iran. One is the nuclear issue, and the other is terror. And the elections in Iran don't affect either of those two interests. In other words, American people, you don't need to worry about what's happening there, because our interests are not at stake. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding, because if the Iranian people are not free, the American people are not secure, and they're not dignified.